Hey there, welcome. My name is Jessica Buchanan, and I'm a New York Times bestselling author, professional speaker, and founder of Soul Speak Press, a non traditional publishing company created for women who've been through something, now they know something, and they can teach us something. In Her Words is a podcast designed to support aspiring memoir authors on their writing and publishing journey. It's hard work, this writing and publishing stuff, and I want to empower you with encouragement and information so you can keep sharing your truth. So grab your coffee, your notebook, find a quiet space, and let's dive in. Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of In Her Words. I'm wondering how your writing is going. I'm always wondering that. I have been I've been having a little more time lately to write. And that has been, I've been actually applying myself in my morning journaling a little bit more than I normally do. I feel like I'm a very committed journaler. I've talked about that a lot, but I feel like it's, I don't know, the quality, not that your journal has to really be quality writing, but it has stalled. Like I haven't really been making any kind of radical discoveries, I guess, about myself or the world at large. I've just mostly been complaining and writing an account of, my very boring days. And that hasn't been very inspirational. It hasn't been very productive. And so I'm gonna record another episode shortly for the next week because I want to talk to you about two books that I'm really digging right now. And but one of them has really challenged me to apply myself emotionally more through my journal writing. And so I've been doing that a little bit more lately, and it is an interesting process and experience. Um, and it has been quite a release, especially as I write in conjunction for DTM4, for Deserts to Mountaintops, Four Out of the Ashes. The chapter that I'm writing about has gone completely in another direction than I expected it to, which as creatives, as writers, we love when that happens, right? Or not, I don't know. This one's about my mom, and um, I still don't know where it's gonna go. I'm still like on the fence about whether or not I actually want to publish this piece. So there's that. I'm definitely, when I talk to authors who are feeling scared or nervous about sharing parts of their lives and things that have happened to them, I've always been so open and forthcoming about the kidnapping and everything that happened to me, and even in the aftermath. But there are a lot of things I haven't written about. And so I feel like it's time to start digging into those, and it's really hard. It's really hard. It's so hard that I can like hardly talk about it. So this has been an interesting season for me, a season of writing. Anyway, what I want to talk to you about today is how do you know when your manuscript needs a developmental editor? How do you know when it's time to call in some help? It could be that you're a very seasoned and experienced writer, and you've written effortlessly and flawlessly before without the help and assistance of anybody else. More often than not, I think I see this a lot. Prospective authors come to us and they're too close to the work and they just can't see it objectively anymore because they've lived it already, they've processed it in therapy, they've healed through different modalities, now they're writing it. And um, you know, oftentimes what happens is we'll get a manuscript that's a very good account, more of like a narrative nonfiction, but it is not a memoir. I reviewed a manuscript like that a couple months ago. It was during the summer. And I don't often do this because I don't have time. But this particular weekend, our electricity went out, and my computer had enough battery to last me the entire weekend. So I read this woman's entire manuscript, and it was an interesting story, but it was an account of what had happened. It wasn't a memoir. It didn't marry those experiences with emotion, then and now, and give us like lessons learned or reflections. And so um, she needed a developmental editor bad. And when I suggested that, I never heard from her again. Because hiring a developmental editor can be really expensive, because it's a lot of work. So here are some telltale signs that it is time for you to elicit some help. Okay. All right. Sign number one, your story feels stuck. Okay. If there's one feeling I hate more than anything in the whole world, it is feeling stuck. And when I am writing and I don't know how to keep going or which direction to move in, that is a really panic-inducing feeling for me. Another way of saying this is that perhaps the manuscript feels disconnected or it feels disjointed. Now, there's nothing wrong with writing in vignettes. I often do that, and I'll write short scenes that I'm really trying to, my goal is to provide a thread that goes through. I'm listening to Jen Hatmaker's new memoir, Awake, that I'm sure is going to hit the New York Times bestseller list. She really is a good writer, lover or hater. I mean, I don't care, from an Instagram perspective, but she really is a good writer in my opinion. And she goes back and forth from childhood to present day, back and forth, back and forth. And what she's doing, and I don't want to spoil it for you if you're going to go listen to it or read it, but she's trying to build the context for basically, I think, the implosion of her marriage. And it's linked to, religion and purity culture, which I grew up very much that way. So I find it interesting from a personal perspective, right? And I can relate to it because I grew up that way. Um, and so I haven't quite gotten far enough to where I'm seeing the threads like start to connect and pull through. But I'm sure they will. And I'm sure she had an incredible editor who helped her developmentally pull those pieces together. But if you've written like tens of thousands of words, you're not sure what happens next, you're not sure you have things in the right order, especially if they're like written chronologically, maybe things start to feel disconnected or you're looping over the same sections. I see this a lot if things become repetitive. You need a developmental editor. The lack of narrative direction can stall your entire project. And I think when you get to that point and you don't hire or bring in some troops, some help, it's going to get incredibly frustrating and your writing is going to be stale. I don't think that you're going to be able to, I mean, I'm not saying that, this is not like, written in stone. And just because this is my experience doesn't mean it's everybody's experience. But when you've stalled out, and you're not sure which way to go, and then you keep writing, which, you have to in order to get through that block, it can be kind of stale and disingenuous and not feel authentic. It can often turn out to be a little bit curated. It can feel a little bit hovering over the surface. Or it could be the opposite, where it feels like contrived. And the reader is going to smell that from a mile away. So it's really, really important if you're feeling stuck to bring in professional help. And I'm not just like talking about, your Aunt May, who was a elementary school librarian. You need to find yourself a certified professional developmental editor. How do you find those? I definitely have some suggestions for you. We do developmental editing here without having to go through the publishing process if you just want to hire one of our developmental editors. And then we have lots of people that we can recommend all over the country that we work with and that our clients have worked with. Otherwise, you can just Google, I need to hire a developmental editor, and see if you can find somebody in your area. A developmental editor will help provide structural guidance. They'll help you identify the missing threads, and then they'll suggest story arcs that will keep the momentum going, that will keep the story interesting. And you know, here's the thing too. I think it's important for a lot of times because we work with beginning writers, we work with writers who have a story but maybe haven't written a lot. Um, you have to understand what the difference is between a developmental editor and a copy editor. You know, a developmental editor, they look at the big picture. They're thinking about, they're kind of like architect of your story. They're asking questions like, does the structure hold together? Are the characters consistent and compelling? Is the pacing working? Pacing is a huge deal. Does the story flow from beginning to end in a way that keeps the reader engaged? You may be engaged because it's your story, but is the developmental editor engaged? That's important. It's about making sure the foundation is strong before you decorate the house, right? It's like the skeleton, and then you can fill in the body, the meat, with the details. The copy editor, on the other hand, comes in after the structure's solid, after the sentences have been crafted. They focus on the details, grammar, punctuation, word choice, consistency, and spelling or tense. They polish what's already there, but they're not going to tell you if chapter three feels unnecessary. Ilsa does, because she is a developmental editor and a copy and our like chief copy editor here at Soul Speak Press. But normally, if you're just like working with a copy editor that you've hired off Angie's list, then they're just going to be looking at punctuation and grammar and tense, verb tense. Or they're not going to tell you if the climax falls flat or if it's boring. They're just there to like brush things up and clean them up. Um, so sign one is that your story feels stuck or disconnected, kind of like this podcast episode. Sign two is that your feedback is confusing or contradictory. Now, this is a big one, and this is why we build in peer review when we're doing our anthology cohorts, the process that we go through. Each author goes through 2 coaching sessions with me. I do 2 rounds of developmental editing. So I'm looking at the structure. I'm looking at whether the narrative arc makes sense. Do they have a climax? And again, they're only working like with 5 to 6,000 words. So it's a little bit easier. Sometimes it's harder. But it's just like one slice of a slice, right? And then once we do 2 rounds of developmental editing, I put them in groups with other co-authors so that they can do peer review because they're often too close to the chapter by that point, and I'm actually too close to it by that point because I've seen it through like the very beginning, from the very beginning all the way to where it is, where it's about ready to go to copy editing. And I think that our authors find that experience to be scary, but also super useful because they get all kinds of feedback, other perspectives. It's the first time these authors are hearing their stories at the point where when I turn their draft over to Ilsa, I've probably read some of these drafts like 6 times. I've heard their story several times, first in the sales call, secondly in the coaching sessions, so I'm too close to the story too. And but if your feedback is confusing and contradictory, like your beta readers give wildly different notes, that's a sign that you might be off on the developmental aspect of the manuscript. If you've revised multiple times, but the core issues still remain, like characters are getting confusing and mixed up and people don't know who is who, or perhaps the timeline is confusing and you can't tell if this is going back in time or if this is present day, or maybe like that sub theme just isn't clear. I find that that's my biggest problem when I'm working with authors is like, okay, this happened, but what are you trying to teach me? What is the lesson that you learned that you want me to, as the reader, to walk away with? And I mean, yes, like on one hand, it's good to have different people from different walks of life with different perspectives and perhaps different belief systems, or, just a diversity of beta readers so that they can give you their full their full advice in terms of what worked for them and what they still had questions about. But if it's like opposite ends of the spectrum, that might be a sign that there's still some work to do on the developmental side. Confusion usually signals deeper storytelling or organizational problems around the chronology, the timeline. How a developmental editor helps, they'll synthesize feedback, they'll identify recurring themes in the critique, and then they'll offer a clear roadmap for revisions. It's very easy for me to sit down and work with a manuscript and see where the holes are, especially if it's new material for me. I'm a question asker. I just have all these questions that naturally come up while I'm reading. The more questions I have, most likely the more holes you have, and you need help from a developmental perspective. All right, sign 3. You're just too close to the work. I was talking to an author that we just signed earlier this week, and she's like, I just can't read it one more time. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I totally get it. Um, you've read it, you've written it, you've lived it, you've processed it, you've alchemized it. And if you have to read that manuscript one more damn time, you're going to like throw up. I get it. You've reread it so many times. You can't really tell what's working. You can't tell what's not. You can't tell if this is too vivid or if you need more sensory adjectives. You can't tell if this is an overshare or if this is being authentic. Like you lose sight of what's real almost. Um, Sometimes when you're too close to it and you become desensitized, you can sense something is off, but you're just not sure. You can't put your finger on it, right? And I hear that a lot. Like I'll get a manuscript and they're like, there's just something there's something still bothering me. Something feels like it's missing, but I can't figure out what, and I need somebody else to look at it with a trained eye who's a seasoned editor to help me identify what's missing and what it can be improved. Oftentimes, I find too, one of the things that I have to do as a developmental editor is say, your word count is too long. Like, there's just too many details in here. Like, no one cares that, you know, you went from Walmart to Wawa to the park, like unless that has some sort of bearing on what's going to happen or you had some sort of revelation on your way to the park. Like oftentimes it takes somebody to come in, a professional to say, there's just too many details in here. It's repetitive. I get it already. And that it's hard to hear that. And it's hard to say that. But at the same time, when I start feeling aggravated, when I'm reading someone's like manuscript and I'm starting to feel like, I get it already. All right, all right, all right, all right. Then I know, okay, we've got to take this out of here. This is repetitive. It's getting on my nerves. It's going to get on somebody else's nerves too. Writers often lose objectivity with their own words. I can't remember where the phrase comes from. It's like, I think someone like Hemingway or something, but that very famous literary um, term, I guess you would call it, of killing your darlings. It's really hard to do that when you're so close to your work. And oh my gosh, I yes, I'm thinking of a couple of clients where we had to go back and forth a lot on killing those darlings, and it was like a mass funeral, and they were grief stricken, all right, and I was just relieved because man, we got to get some of that stuff out of there, because it's just superfluous and it's not important to the reader. It may be important to you that your grandpa died in 1986, but it probably doesn't matter to the reader unless you figure out why it's important, unless you make it important to us. Um, a developmental editor helps bring in fresh professional perspective. They highlight those blind spots that you can't see because you're too emotionally connected to them. They're going to be able to see the inconsistencies because your brain automatically like fills in the blank spots and the inconsistencies because you have that like background and contextual knowledge that we don't have because we don't know you or your life. And then I think a developmental reader, one of my main jobs is to say, yeah, I like stopped reading because I was disengaged. And that's hard to say. It's hard to hear, but this is why, you pay us to for our professional opinions. And this is why it's good to get other opinions too. So, okay, to recap, if you feel stuck or directionless, then you need to hire a developmental editor. If the feedback isn't helping clarify the problems, but it's creating more problems and more confusion, it's time to hire an expert. If you've lost all objectivity and you're going crazy every time somebody critiques it and you're taking things way too personally, it's time to hire a developmental editor. All right, do any of these things sound familiar to you? I'd love to know. Um, you can always contact us at Soul Speak Press, hello@soulspeakpress.com, or just, go check out the website and connect with us there or over on Instagram. And we do help clients with developmental editing. You don't have to buy a package or, work on publishing with us. If you're not ready, you can just work with us by the hour. Sometimes I do developmental editing. It just depends on how busy I am. Um, a couple of other things I want to, before we leave, I want you to sit down. Here's your journal prompt for the week. Ask yourself if you're working on something, am I too close to it? And be honest, like I have been trying to be in my journal writing. Um, is it possible that I'm too close to this? I had, oops, I just hit myself. I had a call with a prospective client earlier this week who's a total newbie. Um, and someone had told them that they were a really talented writer and they should keep going. Therefore, um, they felt as if their first draft of the manuscript was ready to go out and shop around to traditional publishers. And they've never published before. They've never actually really written before. And it could be, I didn't see the manuscript, but chances are they probably needed a little bit of help, which I told them. And I don't think they like that. And that's okay. You pay me to tell you the truth. And that's what I'm here for. I'm going to be direct. I don't sell anybody rainbows, but I tell people the honest truth. But I'll be interested to see how that all turns out. I really do wish them luck, but um, if certainly if you finished a first draft, you need somebody who's a professional to look at it. So your journal prompt for this week is, am I too close to it? And if you decide that you are, why? And who can you reach out to help you to give you some feedback? There's a reason why it takes years to write books, guys. Okay, a couple of things. We have some new offerings here to tell you about. First of all, we have opened up submissions for our next anthology. We're starting a new series. This one's called I'm Still Here. And then let's see, the subtitle is Our Stories of Becoming in the Wake of Surviving Survival. So if that resonates with you, and you feel like you could use some developmental coaching, you are not ready to share the whole story, but you think a chapter would benefit you, and you could definitely benefit from learning more about memoir writing, the publishing process, what it takes to market a book, and you'd like to work within a cohort of other women who have all different experiences and come from all over the world, please let us know. Connect with me, connect with Lauren at hello@soulspeakpress.com. We'd love to share more about the project and what it entails. It will start in May 2026, and the book will publish in January 2027, which feels so far off, but it will be here before we know it. And then the second thing is the writing retreat in Italy, September. I always forget the date. September, I believe it's 14th through the 19th. I hope that's right. I should really write this down. 2026, we're going to be in northern Italy and Piemonte. I mean, I literally spend a good portion of my day every day daydreaming about living in Italy. I love to cook, and so am always in my kitchen having a glass of wine while I'm making dinner, pretending that I'm Italian and thinking about what I would write about, how I would describe the dish that I'm cooking. It's been such a creative outlet for me right now, and it benefits my family. And, you see those memes where it's like if somebody had told me that had included figuring out what to serve for dinner every night for the rest of my life, I would have quit it or whatever. And I feel that way sometimes, but I've decided that we all have to eat, so I might as well just embrace it and enjoy it. So that's where I'm at. But anyway, we're going to be taking cooking classes. We're going to be taking wine tours, agritourismo tours, market tours. We're going to be writing about them. I can't wait. It's just going to be so beautiful. We have 12 spots. I believe we have sold a few, but there's still plenty of room. And I know it's really hard to know like a year out where you're going to be, and what you're doing. But I will say this. I've been looking at other retreats, and this retreat is a bargain. Jess Greenwood, who manages the logistics for us, she can get the prices down. So for like basically a week in northern Italy, all expenses, everything's included, your hotel, your food. The only thing you have to pay for is your flight to and from Milan, and then any alcohol outside of like the wine tours and stuff. Um, it's $3,500, which I mean, that's just really not bad. I was looking at a baking retreat in Champagne, France, that I thought, oh, that looks so fun. I would love to do that. And a shared room with three other people was $4,900. So, this is a good deal. And it'll be, if you know anything about me, we're organized, we run very professionally, and it'll be a good time. So if you're interested in that, um, just connect with me, info at Jess Buchanan, and I'll connect you with Jess Greenwood so that you can get more information. We'd love to have you. I'd love to spend a week with you in Italy. And then two other things that we have on offer. We have two lead authors who are working hard to fill their own anthologies. One is by Ruth Hetland, and the theme around that book is Why We Run. So she's looking for runners who would like to write a chapter and contribute to her anthology. And then the other one is by Wendy Lynn Lugo, and her book is about plant medicine. So if you have had a healing experience or a journey with plants, or anything in that spiritual, like more natural space, I would love to connect you with her. Both of these women have worked with Soul Speak Press. They're incredible. I can't say enough good things about them, and you would deeply enjoy working with them and contributing to their books. Okay, so at the end of the day, my goal is to share what I've learned, what I'm thinking about, because I want you to keep writing. I want you to become a better writer. I want you to know the ins and outs of this business. I don't want you to get frustrated and quit. I want to offer you some suggestions, and I'm just here to be a guide if I can. Thank you for spending some time with me, and I really, really hope that more than anything, you just keep writing. In Her Words is hosted by me, Jessica Buchanan, and is produced by Soul Speak Press, a non-traditional publishing house for women who are ready to tell their story. If you would like to know more about our submission process, I encourage you to check us out at www.soulspeakpress.com or follow us over on Instagram at Soul Speak Press. We appreciate all your questions, and if you would like to leave us a review, we would be so grateful.